RIMURU Go Back in Time by Rimu-chi. Falmouth Invasion 2. Third-person POV. After the intense battle, Benamaru, Hikuro, Hana, and Soei regrouped, each one carrying a sense of victory but maintaining their composure. With them, unconscious and bruised, was Karara, one of the defeated Otherworlders who had attacked Tempest. Together, they made their way to the council room where Shizu, Rain, Soka, Shion, Shun-A, Gobwa, Goblina, and Kaguli waited for their report. As they entered, Shuna stepped forward, her eyes flickering with concern. Shuna, Benamaru, Hikuro, Soei, Hana, you've returned safely. Please, tell us what happened. Benamaru nodded, setting Karara gently on the ground as he began to explain. Benamaru. The Otherworlders attacked as expected. Kyoya and Shogo were dealt with, but this one, he gestured to Karara, survived, albeit unconscious. We decided to bring her here for further questioning. Before anyone could respond, Karara stirred, her eyes opening slowly. The sight of so many powerful warriors, Shizu, Rain, Shion, Shuna, and the others, immediately filled her with terror. She struggled to sit up, her face a mix of confusion and fear. Karara. Voice trembling, please, don't kill me, I didn't mean to, it was Falmouth. They forced us. Shizu's gaze hardened, but she kept her voice calm and steady. Shizu. Forced, you say. And yet you came here, with the full intent of harming our people. Karara's fear grew, her eyes darting around as she realized she was surrounded by Tempest's strongest. She clasped her hands together, her voice breaking. Karara. Please, I'll do anything. I want to meet the leader of this place, the king, Rimuru Tempest. I need to explain myself to him, maybe he'll understand. Shion crossed her arms, her expression unreadable as she exchanged a look with Shuna and Kaguli. Shion. And why should we trust you now? You brought chaos to our lands without remorse, and now that you're cornered, you beg for mercy. Kaguli. Tilting her head, her gaze unyielding, indeed. Convince us, Karara, why we should spare you. Tears began to form in Karara's eyes as she looked down, her voice shaking. Karara. I didn't understand what I was getting into. I thought we'd be facing monsters, but you're more human than we were told. I didn't want to hurt anyone, please, give me a chance. After a moment's silence, Soei stepped forward, his voice low and authoritative. Soei. Lady Shizu, shall we place her in confinement until Lord Rimuru returns? If she is sincere, he will be able to determine her fate. Shizu nodded thoughtfully, her gaze still fixed on Karara. Shizu. Yes. For now, you will be held under guard. Rimuru will hear of this, and he will decide your fate upon his return. Rain. Smirking slightly, consider yourself lucky. Lord Rimuru is a merciful ruler, but don't mistake that for weakness. Karara looked up, relief mixing with lingering fear. She nodded, not daring to speak again. As Soei and Hana guided her out toward the holding cells, Shizu turned to Benamaru and the others. Shizu, thank you for your swift actions today. You've protected Tempest once again, and for that, I'm grateful. We'll await Rimuru's return, and when he arrives, he'll hear the full report. Each warrior nodded, their expressions solemn but resolute. The threat to Tempest had been subdued for now, and though there were still challenges ahead, they knew they were ready for whatever came next under Rimuru's leadership. Later that day, as dusk approached and the orange hues of the sunset painted the sky, the second wave of Falmouth's invasion force approached Tempest. Razari, their commander, marched at the front, leading a unit of 100 soldiers through the silent streets of the monster nation. Despite their number, there wasn't a soul in sight, no civilians, no guards, just an unsettling quiet that made the soldiers uneasy. Razari, grinning smugly, they must have run in fear, hiding from the might of Falmouth's army. His soldiers chuckled in agreement, their confidence bolstered as they made their way to the center of Tempest. However, as they reached the town square, a group of figures awaited them, standing calmly, unshaken by the arrival of the invaders. There stood Benamaru, Hana, Gobta, Gabaru, and Soei, each with a focused gaze fixed on the approaching force. One soldier sneered, pointing his weapon at the group. Falmouth soldier. Is this all Tempest has? A few monsters and their so-called leaders. And this is the nation that thinks it can challenge us. The other soldiers laughed, their taunts echoing across the square. Another soldier. Mockingly, if your king is anything like you weaklings, it's no wonder he hid instead of facing us. Hana's eyes narrowed, her hand resting on the hilt of her sword. Hana. Smirking, mocking back, Well, it takes a special kind of fool to march into enemy territory with such a big mouth. I wonder if you'll be able to keep it up when you're running away. Gobta joined in, crossing his arms and giving the soldiers an exaggeratedly unimpressed look. Gobta, you might want to turn around now and save yourselves the embarrassment. We don't want to spend the whole night cleaning up the mess you're about to make. Gabaru, striking a dramatic pose, his chest puffed out, ha. Kneel before me, Gabaru the Great, and I might consider letting you leave alive. The soldiers exchanged irritated glances, anger building at being mocked so openly. Razari, scowling, his voice dripping with disdain, enough. You monsters think you can toy with us. I'll make you regret every word you've said. Benamaru, who had been watching silently, finally spoke, his tone calm but filled with authority. Benamaru, you may have brought numbers, but that will only make this faster. Tempest isn't a place where you can walk freely and insult its people. You've crossed a line. Soei nodded in agreement, his piercing gaze fixed on Razari. Soei, and you won't be leaving this place unscathed. We will defend Tempest to the last. Razari's face twisted in fury, and he raised his hand, signaling his soldiers to prepare for battle. The Tempest warriors took their stances, each one prepared to defend their home against this new wave of invaders. As the sun dipped below the horizon, the square became filled with an intense energy, the silence broken only by the rustling of armor and the drawing of weapons. Both sides stared each other down, the tension thick enough to cut, and in that final, still moment, everyone knew the battle was about to begin. Gobta vs 20 Falmouth soldiers. As the battle erupted in the square, Gobta faced down a group of 20 Falmouth soldiers who advanced on him, sneering at the lone goblin standing in their way. One soldier pointed his sword at him, scoffing. Falmouth soldier. A goblin. This is what they send to fight us. Gobta grinned, spinning his weapon with ease. Gobta. Ah, is that all you got? I thought you were supposed to be an army. You know, I've got practice drills tougher than this. I bet Hikuro's probably watching right now, maybe he'll let me off practice if I'm impressive enough here. The soldiers rushed him, and Gobta darted forward, weaving between them with surprising speed and agility. One by one, he used quick jabs and precise strikes, dodging their clumsy attacks while tossing in mocking comments. Gobta, laughing as he ducks under a sword swing, is that supposed to hurt? Hikuro's wooden sword hits harder than that. He swept a soldier's legs out from under him, sending the man sprawling, then elbowed another in the gut before sidestepping a third who tried to grab him. The soldiers were left clutching their stomachs or struggling to get up as Gobta easily moved through them, never aiming to kill, just incapacitate. One of the soldiers, struggling to stand after Gobta's quick sweep, looked around at the groaning forms of his comrades, disbelief in his eyes. Injured Falmouth soldier, panting, how can a single goblin be this strong? Another soldier, still on the ground, shook his head in a daze. Falmouth soldier number 2, if one goblin has this much skill, just how strong are the others? Gobta paused, putting his hands on his hips, and gave the soldiers a smug grin as they staggered to their feet, still unable to fully recover. Gobta, well, if you're wondering, I'm probably the nicest one out here. If I were you, I'd be careful who you pick a fight with. Now, any of you want another round? Or do you want to call it quits? The soldiers looked at each other, fear spreading in their expressions. They knew they'd underestimated Tempest, and this goblin, whom they had mocked, had more than shown them the error of their ways. Groaning and clutching at their bruises, some began backing away, unwilling to face the goblin again. Gobta, feeling victorious, waved to the other Tempest fighters, shouting over to Benamaru and Hana with a wide grin. Gobta. Hey, you see that? 20 down, not a scratch. Hikuro better be impressed. Soei vs 20 Falmouth soldiers. While Gobta taunted and toyed with his 20 opponents, Soei was an entirely different presence on the battlefield, silent, precise, and deadly. He moved through the shadows with his signature threads and dagger, barely visible as he slipped between the soldiers who dared to face him. The Falmouth soldiers initially didn't realize what was happening until 5 of their own had already fallen, lifeless, each taken down with a single, untraceable strike. Those nearby caught glimpses of something dark and swift slicing through the air before yet another soldier crumpled to the ground. Panic spread like wildfire among the remaining soldiers. Falmouth soldier, voice trembling, where is he? Another soldier, backing away, eyes darting around, I don't see him. What is he? In pure terror, 15 of the soldiers turned, abandoning all sense of pride as they attempted to flee. Soei's expression remained unreadable, his movements precise and devoid of hesitation. With one fluid motion, he unleashed his threads, which snaked through the air, ensnaring 6 soldiers who were trying to escape. In seconds, each one fell, a silent end delivered by Soei's deadly skill. His eyes barely flickered as he targeted the next group of 6, who scrambled over each other, trying desperately to get away. But Soei was unrelenting. Each step he took was calculated, every strike unfaltering. His threads struck the next group of 6 from multiple angles, swift and merciless, as they too dropped, cut down before they could take another step. The last 3 soldiers, shaking with fear, staggered backward, their breaths ragged as they realized the fate that awaited them. Final soldier, whispering, terrified, "No, please, someone." Without a single word, Soei moved in a blur, his dagger glinting in the dying light as he finished the last of the soldiers, his strikes swift and merciless. The battlefield fell silent, and Soei stood amidst the fallen, his form barely touched by the fray, his face as calm as if he had merely gone for a stroll. As he wiped his dagger and retracted his threads, Soei took a brief glance toward his allies, then quietly melted back into the shadows, waiting for the next threat, prepared to deliver his silent, deadly justice again if needed. Gabaru vs 20 Falmouth soldiers. As the battle raged across the square, Gabaru strutted confidently toward a group of 20 Falmouth soldiers, his arms crossed and a wide grin spread across his face. The soldiers looked him over, sizing up the lizard man who dared stand alone before them, completely unfazed by their presence. Gabaru, smirking, hands on his hips, well. Behold, for you are facing none other than Gabaru the Magnificent, the Suntobe legendary warrior of Tempest. Prepare yourselves, for not everyone has the privilege of witnessing my unparalleled might. The soldiers exchanged annoyed glances. One of them stepped forward, sneering. Falmouth soldier. Oh, shut it, you overgrown lizard. We're here to crush you monsters, not listen to your rambling. Gabaru, undeterred, puffed out his chest even further, placing one hand dramatically on his chest. Gabaru. Oh, I don't expect mere humans like you to understand greatness when you see it. Go ahead, strike me if you dare. My scales are impenetrable. With a growl, the soldiers charged him, weapons raised. They struck Gabaru with swords and spears, but each blow glanced off his toughened, armor-like skin, leaving him completely unharmed. Gabaru didn't even flinch as he let them wear themselves out, soaking in their frustration. Gabaru, laughing, almost bored, is that all you've got? Really, I was expecting more. Don't you know who I am? The soldiers grew more enraged, each one attacking with more force, yet every strike failed to make a dent. Gabaru began mockingly inspecting his claws, ignoring the soldiers' efforts entirely. Gabaru, perhaps you should try harder. You're only scratching the surface of my greatness. The soldiers, now red-faced with irritation, kept at it, but Gabaru simply yawned, his voice dripping with fake sympathy. Gabaru. Oh, my apologies. I must be exhausting you. Should I slow down so you can catch up? Perhaps take a break. I'd hate for you to injure yourselves on my invincible scales. After a few minutes, Gabaru grew tired of their fruitless attacks. He stretched lazily, cracked his knuckles, and fixed them with a deadly grin. Gabaru, all right, you've had your fun. Now it's my turn. Consider this a lesson in what happens when you challenge someone as magnificent as Gabaru. In an instant, Gabaru moved, his strikes as swift as they were powerful. With each punch and swing of his claws, soldiers were thrown back, collapsing to the ground. His taunts fell silent as he unleashed his strength, cutting through their ranks with ease, his scaled fists meeting their armor and breaking it apart effortlessly. Within moments, the 20 soldiers lay defeated around him, groaning in pain or lying still. Gabaru dusted himself off, lifting his head proudly. Gabaru, grinning to himself, ah, another victory for the illustrious Gabaru. I hope you all enjoyed the show. Don't worry, you'll have plenty of time to reflect on your poor life choices now. With a satisfied chuckle, Gabaru turned back to his allies, striding back with his confidence unshaken, utterly pleased with his display of power. Benamaru vs 20 Falmouth soldiers. In the center of the battlefield, Benamaru stood calmly, his crimson eyes locked onto the 20 Falmouth soldiers who faced him. Their leader stepped forward with a sneer, his sword raised as he gestured at Benamaru. Falmouth leader. Mockingly, so, this is Tempest's so-called general. You're nothing but a fool in red, standing alone against us. The soldiers chuckled, emboldened by their leader's words, mocking Benamaru with jeers. But Benamaru's face remained impassive, his gaze cool and focused. The leader charged forward, swinging his sword with all his might. But before he could even process what happened, Benamaru's blade flashed. In a single, fluid motion, he drew his katana, and the leader's head was severed from his body. The lifeless form collapsed to the ground as his helmet rolled to the feet of the stunned soldiers. A heavy silence fell over the battlefield as the soldiers stared in horror, realization dawning on their faces. Some of them began trembling, and one soldier even fell to his knees, the color draining from his face as fear took hold. Benamaru, smirking coldly, his voice laced with disdain, is this truly the might of Falmouth? Pathetic. You're like ants standing before me, and before Lord Rimuru, you're less than nothing. You're just dust, scattered in the wind. Several soldiers gulped, their faces pale. A few began to back away, and in the silence, a faint dripping sound could be heard. One of them had lost control in pure terror. Without warning, Benamaru vanished, disappearing from sight. Before they could react, he reappeared in their midst, his hand raised, and a dark flame flickered to life at his fingertips, a deep, searing black that seemed to absorb the light around it. One soldier fell back, shouting in fear. Falmouth soldier. What is that? Benamaru's smirk widened, his voice deadly calm. Benamaru. This. Just a taste of what you deserve. With a flick of his wrist, the black flames ignited around one of the soldiers, who screamed as the fire consumed him, leaving only ashes in an instant. The others turned to run, but Benamaru moved like a shadow among them, his flames igniting on each soldier he passed. One by one, they fell, engulfed in the relentless, scorching fire that reduced them to nothingness. The soldiers screamed, but the flames were merciless, leaving only a trail of ash in their wake. In moments, the battlefield was quiet, the last of the 20 soldiers reduced to smoldering embers, the ground dusted with their remains. Benamaru sheathed his sword, glancing around at the aftermath with a look of satisfaction. Benamaru. Softly to himself, and so falls another worthless enemy who dared to challenge Tempest. With a final, piercing gaze at the horizon, Benamaru turned away, ready to report back to his allies, leaving the remnants of the enemy's so-called strength scattered like dust in the wind. Hana vs 20 famous soldiers. Hana stood confidently on the battlefield, her violet hair swaying with each breeze, her gaze fixed on the 20 Falmouth soldiers who faced her. She wore a smirk that bordered on boredom, her eyes gleaming with a mischievous excitement. The soldiers eyed her, some of them exchanging smirks and murmuring amongst themselves. Falmouth soldier number 1. Grinning, looking her up and down, such a waste for a beauty like her to be in battle. Falmouth soldier number 2. Scoffing, a beauty, yes, but what's she doing with those monsters? She'd be much better at our side. Their leering eyes swept over her, barely hiding their contemptuous desire. But Hannah's smirk twisted, her expression shifting into one of disgust as she met each soldier's gaze. Hannah. Mockingly, oh, my, what would you boys do without me? Can't fight or think straight, just stuck there drooling. Laughs, how sad. If that's the best you've got, this won't even be a warm-up. Her taunt struck a nerve, and the soldiers bristled, anger flaring as they clutched their weapons tightly. Falmouth soldier number 3. Shut up. We'll show you what happens when you mess with Falmouth's finest. They charged at her, weapons raised, thinking they'd intimidate her with their numbers. But Hannah just laughed, a wicked grin spreading across her face as she stood her ground. As the first soldier swung his sword down at her, she raised her bare hand, catching the blade between her fingers with effortless precision. Hannah. Mocking, oh, is that it? That's all you've got? With a small squeeze, she snapped the sword in half like a twig, letting the broken pieces clatter to the ground. The soldiers stopped in shock, unable to comprehend the strength she displayed so casually. But Hannah only chuckled, her eyes gleaming with a dangerous light. Hannah. In a sing-song tone, come on, boys, don't stop now. The fun's just begun. One by one, they came at her, but she tore through each of them with her bare hands, shattering swords, twisting spears, and sending each soldier sprawling to the ground with a casual backhand or punch. Each strike was brutal, precise, and almost playful. As she moved through them, she began to hum a light-hearted tune, almost as if she were dancing rather than fighting. Her voice rang out as she sang a taunting, lilting song, her voice carrying over the battlefield. Hannah. Singing, oh, you're all so weak and frail, Musical note swinging swords that always fail. Musical note too bad for you. I'm not impressed. Musical note soon you'll all be laid to rest. Musical note. Her laughter echoed as she tossed one soldier over her shoulder, then swept her leg to trip another, driving her fist into his armor with ease, denting it as if it were made of paper. The remaining soldiers looked at each other, fear dawning on their faces as they realized they were no match for her. Falmouth soldier number 4. Backing away, stammering, she's a monster. Hannah merely smiled, tilting her head in mock pity. Hannah. Oh, you're scared now. And here I thought you liked me. Chuckles darkly, well, too late to run now. The last of the soldiers attempted to retreat, but Hannah moved too quickly, grabbing one by the collar and slamming him to the ground, her laughter ringing out as she finished them off one by one. Within minutes, the 20 soldiers lay scattered around her, either lifeless or unconscious, as she brushed off her hands and surveyed her work with a satisfied grin. Hannah, whispering to herself, smirking, pathetic. Now, maybe someone with a real challenge will show up. With that, she stepped over the fallen soldiers, leaving the battlefield with a look of complete disdain, her laughter fading as she rejoined her allies, unfazed by the skirmish. As the battlefield finally settled into silence, Benamaru took in the aftermath, his gaze shifting to the group of 20 Falmouth soldiers that Gobta had defeated but left alive, groaning and struggling on the ground. Benamaru walked over, his expression firm. Gobta noticed him approach and gave an awkward smile, rubbing the back of his neck. Gobta. Sheepishly, I thought, maybe they'd learned their lesson, you know. Didn't think I had to finish them off. Benamaru's eyes narrowed, his tone cold and authoritative. Benamaru. Gobta, mercy has its place, but not here. They invaded Tempest, threatened our people, and would show us no mercy if the roles were reversed. With one smooth motion, Benamaru drew his sword. In a single swing, his blade flashed through the air, a controlled, powerful arc that cut down the soldiers instantly, leaving not a trace of hesitation. Benamaru. Returning his sword to its sheath. No room for mistakes in this, Gobta. Remember that. Gobta nodded, looking down as he took in Benamaru's words, understanding the gravity of their mission. With the battlefield now clear, Benamaru, Gobta, Hannah, Soei, and Gabaru gathered, each bearing the weight of their victory. They turned, moving with purpose back to the council room, where Shizu and the others were waiting. Inside the council room, Shizu, Shion, Shuna, Soka, Kagali, Goblina, Gabwa, and Rain looked up as the group entered. Shizu met Benamaru's eyes, her expression calm yet keenly attentive. Shizu. Benamaru, Soei, Hannah, Gobta, Gabaru, I trust the battle went as expected. Benamaru stepped forward, giving a respectful bow before speaking. Benamaru. The invasion forces sent by Falmouth have been completely eliminated, Shizu-sama. There were no survivors. Their leader made the mistake of underestimating us and paid the price, along with his men. Hannah crossed her arms, a slight grin on her face as she added her own report. Hannah. They really thought they had a chance. Took them down one by one, and they barely put up a fight. Not even worth breaking a sweat over. Soei. Nodding, calm and composed, the enemy soldiers attempted to flee once they saw their leader fall, but they were, swiftly dealt with. Gabaru. Puffing his chest, smugly, and as for me, I demonstrated my unparalleled skill. They couldn't even scratch my scales. Shizu took in each report, nodding as she assessed the information. Her eyes softened briefly with a hint of relief before she resumed her composed demeanor. Shizu. Well done, all of you. You've protected Tempest as Rimuru would expect. I'll make sure Lord Rimuru is informed of your performance. She turned to Gobta, who looked slightly embarrassed but managed to straighten up when she addressed him. Shizu. Gently, and Gobta, your decision to show mercy is commendable in spirit, but in these situations, we cannot afford to leave threats alive. Remember that next time. Gobta bowed deeply, taking her words to heart. Gobta. Yes, Shizu-sama. I'll do better. Shizu's gaze softened, showing her gratitude and pride in each of them. Shizu. Thank you, all of you, for your strength and dedication. Tempest is safe because of your efforts. Rest for now, you've earned it. With that, the group gave their final bows and filed out of the council room, each feeling a sense of pride and satisfaction, knowing they had defended Tempest with unwavering loyalty.